Good evening, members, officers, visitors and members of the public. My name is Councillor Andy Booth and I shall be chairing this meeting this evening. Please note that this meeting is being recorded and that staff may be using body-worn cameras within the premises. Data captured during these recordings will be processed and retained in accordance with the Council's data retention policy, and the meeting recording may be published on the Council's website. Item number 1. This is the emergency evacuation procedure. We are not expecting an emergency this evening. If the emergency alarm sounds, it will be for real, and I advise everybody to make their way to the nearest available exits to my left and to my right. Take the external staircase to the right or the internal staircase to the left. Do not use the lifts, please. Exit will be guided by Democratic Services and other officers that are on site this evening. Please make your way to the assembly point in the main car park beneath this building and remain there until you are instructed to either go home or return to the building. Members must consider each application and everything that is said in the meeting concerning that application and make their decision based solely on their planning judgment and the information available to them. Members must consider each application very carefully. Following a decision by members, delegated authority is given to the planning officer to issue the decision notice. Planning permission is not granted or refused until that notice has been issued. Any member of the council that is not a member of the planning committee may attend as a visiting member and may speak, having given prior notification. Such visiting members may of course include ward members, and whilst visiting members can speak on an application, they are not permitted to vote. Any member acting as a substitute on the planning committee must have undertaken appropriate training to do so. Members must remain in the meeting for the whole item that item is being debated. If they leave the room, they will not be allowed to vote on that specific item. I would like to welcome our public speakers and remind you that you have 3 minutes to speak. That is the main seat in front of me. An audible warning will be given when you have 30 seconds left to speak. If the meeting is deferred to conduct a site meeting, you may speak both at this meeting and at the deferred meeting, and then back again when this item is returned to these chambers. For information, I'm not changing the agenda this evening, so we will hear all 3 items or main items in the sequence they appear on the agenda. Can I now ask Philippa, can we have apologies for absence and substitutes, please?
Thank you, Chairman. Apologies have been received from Councillor Ben J. Martin, from Councillor Anne Kavanagh, who is substituted by Councillor Charlie Miller, from Councillor Kieran Golding, from Councillor Claire Martin and from Councillor Monique Bonney. Thank you.
Thank you, Philippa. And thank you, Councillor Charlie Miller, for substituting this evening. Thank you. Agenda item 3. These are the minutes of the meeting held in this chamber on the 15th of January this year, minute number 608 to 614. Members that were present at that meeting, are you happy for me to sign them as a true record? Thank you very much. I will do so at the end of this meeting. Agenda item 4. Can I invite members that have a declaration, please? Firstly, disposable pecuniary interest. No. And secondly, a disclosable non-pecuniary interest. Councillor MacDonald.
Yeah, I'm a member of Sheerness Town Council, and this would apply to item number 5, which is 6 Marine Parade.
Okay, how do you wish to tackle that, Councillor MacDonald?
Well, I've got some information that I want to, when it comes to the agenda item, and yeah, you'll then know what my own thing is. Sheerness
Okay.
Town Council objected, so
Were you party to that objection?
no, I don't think I was actually at Sheerness, but I've looked at the report and I've got some issues, so I'll make them plain when it comes around to it.
Okay, thank you, Councillor MacDonald. Okay, moving on. This is Part B for the Planning Committee to decide. First item is agenda item number 5. Item 2.1, 25-50, 4680-full, 6 Marine Parade, Sheerness. Can we firstly have the officer update, please?
Thank you, Chairman. No update on this one.
Not even a chance for me to drink. Fine. Okay, we have some speakers. Let me get my piece of paper. Can I first invite Hayley Richardson, please? Good evening. Yeah, take the seat, please. In front of you is a microphone. 2 buttons. If you press the left button, as soon as you are ready, get yourself comfortable. You have 3 minutes, and you'll get the audible warning with 30 seconds left.
Good evening, members. My name's Hayley Richardson, and I'm speaking in support of the proposal on behalf of the applicant. I'm a chartered town planner with 10 years' experience. The application is before you today following an objection from Sheerness Town Council. I'll use my time to respond to the Town Council's comments and explain why members should support the officer's recommendation to grant permission. Before doing so, I'd like to highlight that there have been 0 public objections to this planning application. The first issue they raised was overdevelopment. A certificate of lawfulness application for a HMO use was approved in October 2025, and the use was implemented in January this year. The building can therefore already be occupied by up to 6 people. However, the building's size is excessive, and there is more than sufficient space to accommodate 9 bedrooms with necessary amenities. The application doesn't seek to approve the HMO use, which is already approved, but to increase the number of bed spaces from 6 to 9. The application clearly demonstrates that the proposed layout meets all required standards for room sizes, layout and bathroom provision. The council's housing manager has confirmed that there are no objections and that the proposal meets all the required standards. Occupants will benefit from large bedrooms, many with en-suites, a large kitchen dining space, a utility room, policy-compliant cycle parking, and a spacious rear garden. The proposal therefore represents an appropriate density and makes efficient use of this sustainably located building to assist in meeting the borough's housing need. The second issue raised was flood risk. The application is supported by a flood risk assessment, which confirms that the development does not pose an unacceptable level of risk to occupants. The Environment Agency was consulted and has raised no objection. There are 2 existing bedrooms on the lower ground floor, and this will not change as a result of the proposal, meaning there is no increase in accommodation at this level. The layout also includes a safe refuge area in the loft space should flooding occur. This will ensure residents would not be at risk. There is therefore no planning reason to refuse the application on flood risk grounds. In closing, I'd like to confirm that the site is in an extremely sustainable location, with residents able to access local facilities on foot or by bike, and with excellent access to sustainable transport modes. Locations like this are exactly where HMOs should be supported, making effective use of buildings close to everyday services. This proposal will not introduce a new HMO use. It will simply make more efficient use of the existing building by providing 3 additional bed spaces. A detailed HMO management plan has been submitted, committing the applicant to high quality management and to protecting the amenity of existing residents. Members, this application has been thoroughly assessed by your officer, and I agree with their recommendation that the proposal meets all relevant policy requirements. I therefore hope you will support the officer's recommendation to approve. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. For the benefit of members of the public, we have a procedure where I have to basically propose the motion in line with the officer's recommendation. That is then seconded. Hopefully it's seconded. That allows the committee to debate the item in general. So in line with that, I propose reference number 25-504680-full in line with offer recommendation for acceptance. Is that seconded?
I'll second it, Councillor Winkles.
Thank you, Councillor Winkles. That is now open to the floor. Oh, no, it's not. We have Councillor Worcester online, I think. So, as Town Councillor, Councillor Worcester?
Visiting ward councillor, Chair, and I just want to thank you. I know I asked for a late acceptance as a visiting member this evening, so I apologise about the lateness, but thank you for accepting.
You have 3 minutes, Councillor Worcester.
Thank you. Good evening, committee. I absolutely agree with the Town Council's perspective on HMOs in the Sheerness area, and I come with additional interest because in October, Swale Borough Council discussed a motion to commence a process of introducing a borough-wide immediate Article 4 direction under the Town and Country General Permitted Development England Order 2015 to look at how HMOs were looked at in areas. Sheerness has a large amount of these applications coming forward, and as yet, we are seeing from hearsay detrimental effects to the area for over application of HMOs to the area. So I'm coming this evening to the committee to ask for this item to be deferred this evening or considered deferral, so that the appropriate work can be done by Swale, which has already committed to putting to the relevant committee to look at, so that this application and others that come after it are actually looked at with more focus and enable Swale to have more control over the use of HMOs. I'm not against the use of HMOs. They are absolutely a type of needed residential accommodation for all areas. But I think the implication of having lots and lots of HMOs and the way that they are particularly looked at in areas is very important to the population and how the population accepts them and accepts new residents into the area. For example, I also have a concern over the access to the property and the emergency evacuation access, to be honest with you, because only a few years ago we had a very similar property have a large fire with lots of residents in that property, and one of them ended up jumping from a 3rd floor window. All situations are different, absolutely, but it is concerning that, for example, we're looking at these properties and trying to put as many residents in as possible, when in fact it needs to be really considered how HMOs of large natures like this 9-bedroom application really is going to benefit the area in practice rather than just on paper. Thank you, Chair. I appreciate the time of the committee this evening. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Worcester. I've got a plethora of speakers, but I'll start the ball rolling. Members, on your desk, you'll see half a dozen photographs. They refer to this application. They're given to you as they give an indication as to the state of current parking around that area, which does touch on perhaps an access point of view, but that's for you to decide. Looking through the officer's report, please note that on page 11, under 5.3, before anybody says anything about highways, this does not tick the criteria for KCC highways to make a comment. Okay, so be careful how you do that. All I would add to that is historically the parking around that area may have been sporadic. Should this be approved to a 9-bed HMO, the parking could be exacerbated. But just bear that in mind. I will call people in the order that I saw them. Councillor MacDonald, you were first.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, I've got quite a number of issues because I know the area very, very well. I did see that there is accommodation on the lower ground floor which is existing, and I'm surprised that was given planning originally. I know it was only very recently, in October, I think it was given planning as a yeah. So this area is on level 3 flooding, which is the most serious risk of sea flooding. Now, I know 1897, my grandmother was flooded in Sheerness, and 1953, which I remember. And the 1970s, it did come over. It didn't come to this area, but it did come over to some areas in Sheerness. And frankly, the Environment Agency, and I'm chasing them on another thing, is that they've neglected to repair the groins in Sheerness. So the beach is gone, which is the first line of defence. So I'm on their case, and it is a serious risk for flooding, quite frankly. Right, there's... right, to increase it, it was only given the 6 permission very recently, so I can't see that increasing the thing. These photographs that somebody's produced just show you that somewhere in the report it says there's not a problem with parking. Well, I jolly well know there is. You know, you try parking in Sheerness, it's impossible. I think it's overdevelopment, which is 4.2. It says that the Environment Agency raises no objection. It's a flood risk 3, which is their most serious risk area. It says about surface water. Well, the surface water only if there's a lot of rain, because the Sheerness is a combined sewer. It's foul sewage and rainwater. So I know I owned a property further along in Marine Parade, and when we opened it up once, the water just shot up because of the fact that there was a lot of surface water in there as well. But they have made some improvements. So in item number 6, DM7, it says about vehicle parking. Well, that's impossible, frankly, and we don't know how many of these 9 occupants, if it is given planning, would actually have cars. Water flooding and drainage is DM21. 7.1, living conditions, yes. For those that they are putting, they are, got quite a nice standard. Putting lawful development certificate 7.5. That's how they got planning on it. And again, 7.6, flood risk 3. And as I said earlier, 1897 it was seriously flooded in Sheerness. 1953, which I actually remember, and there was some flooding in the 1970s, but it didn't affect that area. So for the Environment Agency not to bother, I wonder what planet they live on sometimes. That's another issue. 7.22, I don't think it's sustainable, frankly. And if this is granted planning, it will only encourage others along the same block to go for HMOs. I think it's quite unsustainable, frankly. 7.25, street parking again. It says that there's includes on-street parking. Well, there isn't any, frankly. You can't park in Marine Parade. There is a bit of parking there. It shows you on the map at the back. It shows you the opposite Neptune Terrace. This property is on the corner of Berridge. Neptune Terrace is actually higher than what this is. And there's parking on the Neptune Terrace side of the road, but there's absolutely no parking, obviously, in Marine Parade. And Berridge Road is, although it's the widest single carriageway road or double in Sheerness, it's completely blocked. It's a nonsense actually to increase. Right, again, flood risk, they say there's no risk. The problem is it's not just the Earth's increasing risk of flooding through pollution or anything like that. The Earth's plate is actually sinking in the south of England, and so the sea level is rising naturally. And over a period of time, unless the Environment Agency do get off their backsides and do something, it could easily be flooded. And I think it's quite wrong to be increasing the numbers in the area. So, they say there isn't a risk. Well, sorry, but level 3 risk is the most serious risk. So, whoever wrote this, I just don't know. Anyway, I've got ecology. Yeah, okay. They're making a contribution. That's probably fair enough. But the conclusion in 7.5 is it wouldn't result in harmful increase on-street parking. Well, there isn't any available now. So you can see by these pictures, I don't know who produced those, but you can see the double parking in some places, which is extraordinary. I know that can be enforced, but there just isn't any parking in Sheerness, frankly, on the streets. Completely blocked. So, as you probably guess, I will be voting against the recommendation. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you, Councillor MacDonald. Before we move on to the other speakers, members, I draw your attention to page 18, paragraphs 731, 732 and 733, which clearly identify what the professional teams base their decision or commentary on the potential flood risk. Okay, so let's please not have repetition with regards to that, because it clearly states in there from the professional team their view. Councillor Miller, please.
Thank you, Chair. As the Speaker highlighted, pretty much every concern that could be raised appears, in my opinion, to have been addressed. I do take on board the flooding concerns, but the flood risk assessment was deemed acceptable, and the Environment Agency, who you would expect to be well informed on this, raised no objections. In my opinion, I don't think there are reasonable grounds to turn this application down, and whilst I'm willing to listen to the rest of the debate, currently I'm in favour of this application. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Miller. Councillor Clark, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I do have concerns about the parking, but I note the highways contribution, so I shall say no more on that. My question to the officers is really around the emergency egress arrangements. I see nothing in the report to suggest that either the fire service or anyone else has been consulted with regards to emergency egress, either by internal means or by an external staircase. And it was my understanding, I may be corrected on this, that HMOs above, I think it is the 6 that are allowed under permitted development at this present time, do have to have a fire or emergency egress provision. So could the officer give me some sort of steer on that, and would that be something that the building control would need to take up with the fire service, or is it something that should have been included in the report? Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Clark. Is that all your questions? It is, thank you. Officer, please.
Thank you, Chairman. In terms of emergency access from the property, the existing building, as has been said in the dialogue tonight, has a lawful development certificate in place for the occupation by 6 different occupants effectively, which spread across the different floors. In terms of the HMO for 9 people, they would need to apply for an HMO licence. So all of the relevant criteria applicable to the occupation of the property as a 9-person HMO would be addressed through that separate process rather than through the planning process that we're dealing with at the moment. We've kind of obviously set out the relevant considerations in the report from a planning perspective, and it would be the HMO licence that would address kind of any remaining concerns around access and the actual I suppose day-to-day operation of the HMO itself. So that's...
Councillor Clark.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. I think that answers my question quite nicely. Thank you.
Super duper. Councillor Winklis, please.
Thank you, Chair. Can the officer put a picture of the actual premises we're talking about in relation to Beveridge Road, please?
Yes, I can. Councillor Winklis, bear with me 2 seconds.
Have you got a question relating to this, Councillor Winklis, or just like to see a photo?
I have got a question in there.
Okay, cool.
Yeah. Okay, thanks for that. Basically, if I'm correct, and this is a question, there are no parking facilities actually at the premises. I see the office, you nodding, officer, that is correct, is it?
That's correct.
Okay, I just wanted to have a view of the building, and that's the point I will consider before I make my decision on the parking. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Braun, please.
Thank you, Chairman. And I live a couple roads down. Parking's awful. Anywhere in Marinetown, parking's awful. I am a bit frustrated. I understand that obviously when this is being reviewed, it will be during the daytime because that's when people work. That's also when residents work. Yeah, of course you're going to find spaces if people are at work. And I just find it frustrating that the report specifically states that on-street parking is available, particularly in Berridge Road, which is probably the worst road in Marinetown. You can see in these pictures, people are parking illegally, double parking down that road. It's not that there's no spaces. There are less than no spaces. There are negative spaces in that road because people are parking illegally to double park down there. So I just found it really frustrating. But that's my only major issue with, along with fire safety. But that's not really what we're here to consider yet.
Thank you, Councillor Braun. Councillor Marchington.
Thank you, Chair. I used to have a house in Berridge, only about 4 doors down in number 11. It's just I bought on the side, did it up, and put a tenant in there. But I had to give it up because the parking was just so atrocious that I actually moved the tenant to another house in Queenborough. But I'm actually not. But the main thing I wanted to talk about, I've been badly involved or heavily involved, as you say, with 3 HMOs in the last 6 months in Queenborough High Street, or 1 in North Road and 2 in Queenborough High Street. And been through all the legalities. Everything they do is legal. There's nothing against what they can do. I had one where they always knock the inner walls out, which they're allowed to do. You can alter any inner wall however you like, reposition it. But unfortunately, the 2 houses together, there was only one single skin, and they knocked right through into somebody's staircase. So that's an ongoing issue. But again, it's a personal thing between the 2 owners. It's nothing to do with anything illegally being done. So, I know the rules on everything in here is legal, and going back many years ago, back to the college days, all the big houses in university towns are HMOs. Always have been. You know, you'll get sort of quite a number of students all lodged in together. You know, all got a separate room, and that's it. That's what they have, and that's normal. You know, so there's nothing against. I've got nothing against the commission for this because there's no illegal act taking place. So thank you. So we'll be voting for it.
Thank you, Councillor Martin. So there wasn't a question there then?
No, sorry.
Oh, great. I just wanted to... I didn't hear one. I didn't know if there was.
No, sorry, I was just stating the involvements I've had.
Superb. Councillor Clark, you want to come back?
Very briefly, if I may, Chair. Just speaking with my hat on as Chairman of the Joint Transportation Board, I understand the concerns with parking round there, and through you, if I may, the ward councillors can always start a petition with the view to installing residents' parking in those streets around Marine Town, and present that to the Joint Transportation Board for consideration. Thank you.
Yeah, sound advice, Councillor Clark. Thank you. I see no more hands. Right. Page 15, 7.15. Policy DM14 states that any new proposed developments should not cause significant harm to the amenities of surrounding users or areas, and due consideration will be given to the impact of the proposed development upon neighbouring properties. A couple of members have touched on parking. We have no control who lives in potentially those 9 bedrooms. It could be 9 people, it could be 18 people plus. We know it happens. Let's say it's 9. Let's be fair. Let's say it's 9, and let's say 5 of those have got cars, and the other 4, I can't do maths. The other 4 use the provided, potentially or proposed provided cycle shed. Happy days. But those 5 have got to find somewhere to park. Not all of those 5 cars will be Nissan Micras. Other cars are available of that size. Some could be construction vehicles, transit vans, works vehicles, you name it. As does happen in any housing area. So again, one has to bear that in mind. And I know it's a first come, first served, because none of those spaces are allocated unless, as Councillor Clark says, there are parking restrictions or permits available. Councillor Braun.
Thank you, Chairman.
I
Just
mean,
to provide you with
mid-flight,
another
Councillor
small
Braun.
car.
Sorry?
Just to provide you with another small car, my mum actually switched to a Fiat 500.
Congratulations, Councillor
due to the
Braun.
parking in Sheerness, because often there's a bit of a gap that you can just about squeeze into.
Splendid. Thank you. What colour is it?
I think it's about baby blue.
Yeah, great. Can I carry on? Thank you. Same page, item 7.16. Halfway down there it says, it is not considered that the proposals would give rise to an unacceptable noise and disturbance impact on neighbouring amenity. So that's potentially 18 people, plus more, potentially. Everybody lives like a mouse, don't they? Councillor Hunt.
Thanks, Chair. You keep saying that, but there is a condition on there that states that it will be no more than 9 people.
As I said earlier, we have no control over how many people go in there, and we understand that it may be conditioned, but not everybody abides by conditions. I respect your comment, though. But coming back to Councillor MacDonald's comment, we do not know at this stage. So, but where else was I going to go? All that said, you come to the conclusion on page 21. Third line, nor will it result in a harmful increase in on-street parking. as the officer's conclusion. Members, that has been proposed and seconded. I believe we've discussed it fully. All those in favour of the proposal, please show. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Those against? 1, 2, 3. Any abstentions? 1 abstention. That is then carried. Thank you very much. Members, before we move on to item 2.2, there is a couple of table papers. I'll give you 3 minutes to read that. So we'll recommence at 7. We'll recommence at 7:40. Okay. Thank you. Okay, can we have an update, please? Agenda item number 2.2.
Thanks, Chairman. Evening, councillors. The updates are what you've read. There's nothing in addition to that. A presentation is available if you'd like it, Chairman.
Thank you very much. We have some speakers. Can I please invite Parish Councillor Mr. Gary Rosewell, please? Representing Upchurch Parish Council. Good evening. Take the seat when you're comfortable. In front of you is a console. If you press the left button when you are ready to speak, you have 3 minutes. You'll be notified when you have 30 seconds left. Thank you.
Good evening, Gary Rosewell, Upchurch Parish Council. Thank you very much. Upchurch Parish Council objects to this planning application for the following reasons. The proposed development would have a detrimental effect on the village, on the entrance to the village, comprising both the visual quality and character of the area. The aesthetic impact of this development would not be in keeping with the existing rural surroundings. Housing needs. The type of housing proposed does not align with the specific needs of the village, particularly the urgent shortage of affordable starter homes. A housing needs analysis was commissioned by the Upchurch Parish Council several years ago, identified a particular demand for homes suitable for local young people who wish to remain in the parish. Since the survey, no local developments have addressed this need. I can particularly speak about this. Over 20 years, I've employed 5 young people from the village in their early 20s. They've now got families, and none of them can afford to live in the village. One lives in Rainham, one lives in Newington, one lives in Sittingbourne, one lives in Herne Bay, and the latest one has moved to Birchington because there is no affordable housing, no help to buy housing, no part-buy housing in Upchurch. So this is completely the wrong type of development that Upchurch needs. The addition of new homes would significantly increase traffic and vehicle movements already narrow, congested roads, which could create safety concerns. There are specific risks associated with the increased congestion, particularly near the primary school, where traffic already struggles to navigate during peak times. Infrastructure strain. The local infrastructure, especially the foul water drainage system, is already under strain, with frequent reports of drain overflows and localised flooding during heavy rain. The proposed development would exacerbate these existing issues, further taxing an already fragile system. Environmental impact. The development would result in further loss of valuable wildlife habitat affecting the local ecosystem. Given the importance of these natural spaces, the proposed raises concerns about long-term environmental consequences. Light pollution. The introduction of additional lighting from the proposed development would contribute to increased light pollution, disrupting the natural environment. Policy considerations. Under the 2017 adopted local plan, Upchurch is identified as a parish where housing growth is not required. And I'd ask the question on what local plan this will be questioned today and in the appeal when it goes. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much indeed. Can I call please Jane Scott? As acting for the agent. Good evening. When you're comfortable, press the button on the left-hand side and you will have 3 minutes with 30-second reminder. Thank you very much.
Good evening. This proposal seeks outline planning approval for 16 residential dwellings, with access and layout only to be agreed at this stage. The layout proposes 16 dwellings in a mix of sizes and tenures that reflects the identified borough's need in the strategic housing market assessment. It also provides a community parking area for community use and visitors to the dwellings. An executed undertaking provided as part of the appeal documents confirms this use, along with the applicant's agreement to pay the identified contributions, including SAMs. Your officer notes that statutory consultees raised no objection to these proposals and finds no harm to character and appearance, the integrity of the Swale Medway SPA Ramsar sites, landscape, highway safety, living conditions or flood risk. He also finds the proposals meet BNG provision. The Borough is unable to provide a 5-year supply of housing land, and therefore paragraph 11D of the framework is engaged, which states that planning permission should be granted. The development will provide 6 affordable units, 2 as first homes and 4 by a registered provider, which provides significant benefit to the council by ensuring on-site delivery. At 37.5%, your officer advises you that this falls 2.5% short of the 40% requirement in policy DM8. However, your emerging affordable housing policy H1 in the current Regulation 18 local plan review has reverted to a 30% requirement across the borough as a whole, based on the findings of the 2020 housing market assessment. This provides more up-to-date evidence on need than the 2017 plan, whose affordable policy is both 8 years old and out of date, given paragraph 11D. Therefore, the proposals are providing 7.5% more affordable provision here than your new emerging plan proposes to be sought based on current need. The layout offers a pleasant, low-density, high-quality, bespoke residential development with good-sized gardens, private, visitor and community parking spaces, new hedgerow planting and retains existing, well-established boundary hedges. A new access and Forge Lane will be provided together with a community parking area at the site's frontage, which will alleviate existing on-street car parking in Forge Lane. The existing pavement in front of the school will be extended across the site's frontage to further improve pedestrian safety. The site is well located to facilities and services in Upchurch, being adjacent to the existing built boundary of the settlement and the primary school. Children living here will walk to school, and once the sibling criteria has worked through, the school will take in more children from Upchurch itself, resulting in less traffic entering Upchurch. It is respectively requested that your officer's recommendation be supported. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. Members, I move the recommendation, reference number 24-504410- out for outline. Is that seconded, please? Councillor Braun, thank you very much indeed. That now allows us to debate. Before we do so, we have ward members present. Can I call, please, which order you prefer? Councillor Chris Palmer and Councillor Richard Palmer.
Thank you, Chair.
Again, you have 3 minutes, please.
This site lies outside of the defined built-up area of Upchurch, where housing growth is not required under the Swale Borough Local Plan Bearing Fruits 2017 in paragraphs 4.3.21 to 4.3.23. Granting permission would result in unjustified countryside encroachment contrary to the spatial strategy and the MPPF. It is not a sustainable location. 1/3 of the frontage of this plot is at high risk of flooding and does so frequently because I drive past it quite a lot. We hear of food sustainability daily, yet this will affect the Lower Howstow Upchurch fruit belt, destroying the landscape and the character of the area. The land surrounding the site is Grade 1, best and most versatile agricultural land. Information has been provided on the dwelling mix, but I have doubts that the parking is adequate. The housing need is based on borough-wide, not Upchurch need. The school drop-off point, or the community parking, is not going to be sufficient. I travel there regularly to pick grandchildren up from school, and parking along that road is dangerous. There's double parking. It frequently becomes completely gridlocked because people don't give way. And it's more likely to be used as residence parking. And I've heard many times in this chamber that garages are not included as parking because people use them for storage, and the whole description of the parking is unclear. Carports, car barns or garages, they're all mentioned. This conflicts with the local plan policy and the MPPF, and I suggest that everybody that votes against this. It's not wanted in Upchurch, it's not sustainable in Upchurch, and it will ruin just the general character of a very quaint, well-established countryside village. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Chris Palmer. Councillor Richard Palmer, please.
Thank you, Chair. I think the Parish Council made some very good points there, and also my colleague. But what I'd like to look at is the parking standard within that, because this site falls under a rural community. So when we look at a 4-bedroomed house in our parking standards of 2020, we state 3+ spaces per unit. Upchurch has very poor public transport. No railways, limited bus service. People will be dependent on the car. Now, a 4-bedroomed house, well, you're going to have 4, maybe 5 people driving. No one can tell what happens in the future, but all too often we sit in this planning committee saying we can't tell what's going to happen in the future, so we can approve things, and then when there's absolute chaos, we say, I wonder who did that. So I think we need to look at our parking standards, and we don't apply the minimum where it says 3+ spaces. We need to say perhaps this site, because of its rural location, it's an exception site, should have at least 4 spaces. So I don't think, particularly on the 3 and 4 bedroom houses, I do not feel that this is compliant with our own parking standards and should be refused on that level. There are probably more sustainable locations, and the main thrust of the National Policy Planning Framework is sustainable development. Well, this development will lead to people being dependent on the car use. So we try to cut down on that by putting development in areas where there are good transport links and facilities. So I feel we need to look what was delivered there. Also, I was moved when someone said about when the speaker for the applicant said about the affordable housing, 6 affordable housing. Well, I can speak from experience in Newington. What happens is there's no registered provider will take on such a low number, so it'll be converted to a cash sum to go somewhere else, and the homes will not be affordable homes for local people. And I think the Parish Council summed that up quite well. What people need is affordable local homes. This does not offer this. It does not offer solutions as raised by my colleague and the Parish Council. It is clearly not a sustainable location within the definition of paragraph 2 of the NPPF. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Palmer. Members, just for your note, on page 25, I'll read it out. An appeal for non-determination has been submitted, and therefore the application is being presented to us, the Planning Committee, to establish what our decision would have been should we still have had the powers to determine the application. That's what we're looking at tonight. Okay. Who would like to speak? Councillor Speed.
Thank you, Chairman. My first point was actually going to be the point you've just made, which is that an appeal for non-determination has been submitted. So if we were to agree with the officer's recommendation to not object, that means we would go through the time and expense of an appeal hearing, despite the fact we would be agreeing with the applicant, which I've always felt is a stupid system if both sides are actually agreeing with each other. But notwithstanding that, I'd like to know, through you, Chairman, from the officers, why this was not determined by the deadline, because if we end up having to pay for an appeal where we're actually on the same side as the applicant, that would be a complete waste of time and money. Looking at the officer's report, under paragraph 7.3.2, it says, while the council's mapping indicates that the agricultural land classification is grade 1, the application was supported by a report demonstrating the site should actually be classified as grade 3B, i.e. it's not BMV. And under 733, it stated that as the council is not in a position to question the applicant's submissions in relation to the agricultural quality of the land, no objection is raised on this ground. Well, why were we not in a position to question that? Why did we not commission our own report to check whether this is BMV land or not? That seems to be quite an important point that we are not expressing a view on. This application conflicts with policy ST3. It's outside the settlement boundary. It's an unallocated site in the countryside. We can't keep waiving this policy. It's an extremely important policy. If we do so, it sets a precedent that tells other developers they can completely ignore that important policy. It probably conflicts with policy DM31, but we don't know whether it's BMV or not, so we don't know if it does conflict. And then if we look at paragraph 7.4.2, which is the housing mix, what the HMA requires is that 1 to 3 bedroom homes make up 81% of market need and 4 bed homes 19%. But what is proposed is 100% 4 bed market homes and 0, 1, 2 or 3 bed market homes. On affordable housing, it's totally skewed away from families. What's required under the HMA is a pretty broad spread with 50% in 3 and 4 bed units. This proposes 83% 1 and 2 bed units and 0% 4 bed affordable homes. So larger affordable family homes are designed out of this scheme altogether. This conflicts with policy CP3, which requires development to deliver a balanced mix of dwelling sizes and types, notwithstanding the comments in the report which suggests that Newington only needs expensive housing, which would appear to conflict with the comments from the parish councillor. It also conflicts with paragraph 60 of the NPPF, which states the need to reflect the size and type of housing needed to address the needs of different groups, including families, and deliver a mix of housing. And looking back at appeal judgments, inspectors have ruled that a proposal can't be said to comply with paragraph 60 if it selectively applies housing need evidence to one tenure whilst ignoring it in another. And I think that's what's happening here. Thank you, Chairman.
Sorry, I turned myself. Thank you, Councillor Speed. Ian, do you want to answer the last part first with regards to the paragraph 742?
Sure. Thank you, Councillor. Thanks. In terms of the housing mix, it's correct that all the open markets would be 4 or 5 bed houses. I have a slide that I can show that on. The affordable housing are the 6 smaller units. There'd be 2 times 1 bed flat, 3 or 1 bed house, should I say, 3 2 beds and 1 3 bed. It's quite correct that that doesn't perfectly reflect the requirement that's identified in the housing market assessment. However, the HMA requirement is borough-wide, and there is a need for affordable housing of all sizes, and this would help to meet that need. The provision of affordable housing can be and often is afforded substantial weight, or at least significant weight, in appeal decisions, and that's the approach that we're taking here. In terms of the need or the provision of larger dwellings for the open market, the policy CP3 and DM8 refer to the local housing market areas. This is in the ME9 postcode, which page 95 of the local plan, the preamble to the policies, talks about the area having higher average prices, reasonable levels of demand, and as such the market is strong. The overall objective is to not change the area's housing offer, and going forward the aspiration could be to encourage the development of good quality family housing for which the greatest local demand exists. That's the basis on which we've proceeded to say that there's, whilst it doesn't align with the mix that is specified in the borough-wide HMA, the mix, there is a need for housing of all sizes. we're at 3.97 housing land supply at the moment. So the tilted balance in the NPPF does apply. And for that reason, we're giving the supply of the boost to the supply of housing significant weight. In terms of policy ST3, as you've read in the comments today, that's been circulated in the tabled update, the policies of the local plan not up to date, in part due to there not being a 5-year housing land supply. So the NPPF says that the presumption of tilted balance in favour of development set out paragraph 11 of the NPPF is applicable. So there is a conflict with the development plan. We acknowledge that in the report. There is a conflict with policy ST3 because it's outside the built-up area boundary. There is a visual impact of the proposal, which we've also addressed. However, unless the harm clearly and demonstrably outweighs the benefits, then the NPPF indicates that planning permission should be granted, and that's the stance that we're taking in this case. In terms of the agricultural land, I think we go on in the report to say that we haven't had it independently tested. We found that the evidence provided by the applicant was credible. We see in many cases, and I'll take you back to September in Church Lane, Newington, where we agreed that there was great loss of Grade 1 agricultural land, but the benefits of housing supply outweighed that, and it's very often found that the conflict with policy DM 31 is outweighed by housing supply, and so it was not expedient for us to go away and get the agricultural submissions independently tested, and we thought that the assessment provided was credible. In terms of why it was not determined, the application, we can go into it by all means. It's not necessarily relevant to the determination that you should reach in respect to the planning merits of the proposal, but I can say that we've had 2 case officers, there's been amended plans, there's been discussions around affordable housing provision, there's been works to, I believe, the surface water drainage, there's been amendments relating to the changes following the objection from the school. We've had quite a few sets of amended plans, they've been reconsulted upon, and the applicant's chosen to submit an appeal for non-determination. It's in their gift to do so after the statutory period has passed, which it did in this case. I would suggest that that's not relevant to the planning merits of the development. It's a procedural matter which we could pick up elsewhere, but doesn't affect whether you as councillors should support or object to the proposal. If I could pick up a couple of other points, Chairman, please do. Related to some of the things that we've heard, which I think might be of clarification. So to give a bit of an overview for the proposal, there's 6. I haven't got a mouse. There's the 6 units furthest to the north, closest to the school and Forge Lane. They're the affordable units. The other dwellings are the open market. The schedule on the right hand side sets out how they're all 4 and 5 bed for the open market, and there's the smaller affordable units as I described earlier. That's the provision of hedges through the site and landscaping, which is a reserved matter. That's the access. But the crucial one that you've heard about, parking provision. The plan on the left shows the provision of car barns and garages, public spaces and visitor spaces, and allocated spaces for the dwellings. There's, as you can see, 4 spaces for all of the open market dwellings, 2 for each of the smaller affordable units. That is a policy compliant parking provision. And in addition, you've got the community car parking area at the entrance to the site. That's a street scene which is illustrative, and then there's photos to give it some context. The bottom left photo shows the extent of the existing public footpath that ends just after the school, the entrance to the school. That would be extended into the site. The east boundary, which you can see in the top right photo, opposite the east, in the east right top right photo, that's the public footpath that runs adjacent to the site, which you can see there. These are views from the other direction. There's a Grade 1 listed church in the distance, and that's the view from the public footpath towards the site. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Ian. Moving on. Councillor Clark, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Some of the points that I was going to raise have been made far more eloquently than I may have made them. If I could just ask the officer, can you confirm the actual date that the application should have been decided by, please?
Is that your only question, Councillor Clark?
I do have a couple of comments.
Okay, carry on then whilst Ian finds it.
I mean, should that date have been fairly recently, in recent times? I do find it somewhat annoying that, as this is only an outline application, and I doubt that the applicant is actually chomping at the bit to dig spades into the ground, I do find it somewhat annoying that they can't just wait a few weeks before they decide to stick in an appeal, which is going to cost them money as well as it may cost us money, if we then turn around and agree with them. So I hope that if they do get the outline permission tonight, they're going to take heed and pull the appeal so that we both save money in the long run. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Have you got the date, please?
Chairman, thank you. The extensions of time were agreed up until the 22nd of July. The application was submitted in October 24. Extensions up until 22nd of July 25. In terms of the costs, this is, like I say, I'd advise that we stick to the planning merits of the case rather than anything procedural around it. However, for background, the appeal is following the written reps procedure. So of all the three procedures that it could follow, that is the cheapest. The applicant probably wouldn't be able to withdraw the appeal because now that it's started, we've lost our jurisdiction and it is for PINS to determine rather than us, and it couldn't revert back. Thank you, Chairman.
Councillor Hunt, please.
Mr. Chair, been past this land loads. Remember, about 25 years ago, I used to drive past here on the way to work and think, I can't believe no one's put an application in on this site. It's right on the edge of the village. But generally, this is a good example of an application that should absolutely be refused. But we are not in a position, and it's through the failure of this council to not have a local plan, not have a 5-year housing supply, to be in a position where we can't push and get more spaces or say that it's outside the built-up boundary. We've had so many appeals where we have in this committee refused applications when they're on the edge of, for example, Eastchurch. There's been some. Great example. You think it's not a sustainable location, yet the inspector comes along and grants permission because we haven't got enough housing. So that is the position that we're in. And as it is going to appeal, we do need to stick, unless anyone has got some real strong evidence that officers can take to an appeal to prove that it shouldn't be happening, which I don't think anyone will have. We need to be going with the officer's decision on this. Otherwise, we will be up against major costs by just putting things in to say we don't like something. We're not in a position to fight it, unfortunately. So, yeah, I think it's right that we do go into the appeal with the way the officers have recommended it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hunt. Councillor Winkles.
Thank you, Chair. Just a quick one to the officer. I know you did put the pictures up, but my question is, could you put a picture up and actually showing exactly where the proposed access road is going to be in Falls Lane there?
Through you, Chairman, I'll start by showing that plan because that shows the 2 points of access with the sort of between the red, which is intended to be the hedges or the footpaths, sorry. In terms of the photos, probably the two on the left show it best, or the top left in particular. That's pretty much from the position of the northwest access. the bottom right one is slightly along from the more central access.
Okay, that's just a quick observation, more than a question, I suppose. But so it's a pretty straight piece of road for visibility.
For you, Chairman, if it's probably best shown on the site plan on the left there.
Right.
From the sort of centre of Upchurch towards where the chip shop is, all the way down towards where the cricket club is. It's not straight, but it's not far off.
Okay, thank you.
Any more? Okay. Sorry, Councillor Marchington.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I still can't get away at the moment from where we're so short of agricultural land. This country we're already past the point where we can grow enough food for ourselves. We've known it for 25 years already. So we're going to become more and more dependent on imported food, and issues between other countries are going to really rocket food prices if we keep building houses and building the population more and more and more. We've got a future coming on that we can't sustain. So I've always voted against the destruction of agricultural ground, and I'm afraid I must hold that tonight on that basis alone. Thank you.
Thank you. Members, we heard three reasons or suggestions why we should turn this down. One was parking, which has been covered. The second was flooding, which has been covered. And the third was the question over sustainability, which I believe has been covered. As Councillor Hunt said, we're in a situation where we are being challenged on non-determination, and that decision is now not ours to make. It's being taken out of our hands. So what you're doing, as I said at the start of this item, is you're determining whether you would accept it if we were still making that decision today. It has been proposed and seconded. Those in favour of the officer's recommendation, please show. 1, 2, 3, 4. Those against. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Any abstentions? 1, 2. Okay. Ian, would you like to respond to that before we go further?
Thank you, Chairman. If the committee is minded to say that we wouldn't support it, then stands to reason that the opposite must be true, that you presumably would suggest that we object to the proposal through the appeal procedure. In that scenario, we'd ask for the committee to give us its reasoning why. I would recommend, as I've set out, that there is more than enough parking. The surface water issue at the site is dealt with through the flood risk assessment, and the lead local flood authority are entirely happy with the proposal, subject to conditions. So I wouldn't recommend going on either of those two, which you've advanced. That leaves the sustainability. That's a matter of your judgment. Sustainability can be a fairly wide consideration. I'd say it goes beyond simply whether a bus runs to the site, which it does. You might wish to consider, if he's going down that line, the fact that it is outside the settlement boundary. We've identified as officers that there's not a significantly adverse impact in visual grounds on the landscape, but there would clearly be an impact on the countryside and the rural setting because it's outside the village envelope, built up area boundary. Sorry. If you was to be minded to say that development in the countryside outside the built up area boundary with the harmful visual impact and the urbanising effect of that, as viewed from the public right of way, That might be some approach that you might wish to consider. Obviously, as an officer, our position is that you don't, but you voted against our position, so over to you. Really.
Thanks, Ian. For what it's worth, my opinion that doesn't hold water. I think that's really weak, but it's not my decision. Who wants to make a recommendation with some solid ground? Councillor Speed.
Thank you, Chairman. As I said earlier, and as the officers has just mentioned, it conflicts with policy ST3. It's outside the settlement boundary, an unallocated site in the countryside. It conflicts with policy DM31, which is development on BMV. The housing type doesn't align with the mix in the HMA, so it's in contravention of policy CP3, and it's in contravention of NPPF paragraph 60. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Speed. Ian, would you like to respond to that?
Yeah.
Please do.
Sorry,
members, we need to be very careful how we word this. Okay.
Through you, Chairman, could I check with Councillor Speed? Paragraph 60 of the NPPF relates to enforcement. I think we could focus on development plan policies ourselves to work. If we focus on the issues, we can tailor the actual policy or the NPPF paragraphs at a later date. We can focus quite clearly on the policies that you've cited. That's not a problem. That's a putative reason for refusal. Based on what you've said, the proposed development, bear with me, by virtue of the position of the proposed dwellings outside the built-up area boundaries of the Swale Borough, will conflict with the council's settlement strategy. The development would have a harmful impact on the character and appearance of the locality and a significant and inadequately mitigated impact on the local landscape. The proposal is therefore unacceptable and contrary to policies ST1, ST3, CP4, DM14 and DM24 of the local plan and the NPPF. The proposed development, by virtue of the provision of a mix of housing and affordable housing that would fail to reflect the established needs of the borough, would conflict with policies CP3 of the local plan. I mentioned affordable. I don't know if you wanted to include that or not. If you did, we'd add DM8. And then the proposed development result in the loss of best and most versatile agricultural land, and it's not been demonstrated that an overriding need exists for the development that cannot be met on land within the built-up area boundaries, or that no alternative site on land at a lower grade could accommodate the proposed development. Proposal is therefore unacceptable and contrary to policies ST1, DM3 and DM31 of the local plan.
Councillor Speed, you made the proposal.
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, I'd be happy to propose that. Yes, I would like to include affordable housing. So I would like to include policy DM8 because it's 0% 4-bed affordable homes. So there's no provision for larger affordable family homes. Apologies if I've got my NPPF paragraphs wrong. There's so many versions of the NPPF now. I might be looking at the wrong one, but there is one, I think, that refers to reflecting the size and type of housing needed and delivering a mix and addressing the needs of different groups, including families. So if you wouldn't mind checking that for me to check which paragraph that is. But with those comments, I'd be happy to propose that.
Who wants to second that? Nobody at the moment. Hang on, Councillor Marchington.
Paragraph 63 builds on the one paragraph before it, which talks about the amount of housing, but then it talks about the established within this context of establishing need, the size, type and tenure of housing needed for different groups in the community should be assessed and reflected in planning policies. These groups include, and then it lists all sorts of groups. Yeah, so it's 62 and 63, that one. Yep.
Councillor Marchington, are you happy to second that? You are. I'm disappointed that it's come to our professional team to make the wording for that proposed refusal. I'm disappointed, but there we go. That has been proposed and seconded. Those in favour of the proposal as it stands, please show. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Those against. 1, 2, 3, 4. Those abstaining. 1, 2, 3. How we change. That therefore is refused. Thank you very much. Members, moving on. Item 3.1. This is reference number 25-504706. Outline. Can we have an update, please?
No update, Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Can I then call, please, Louise Campbell? Mrs. or Ms? Good evening to you. Take a seat. As soon as you're ready, when you're comfy, press the left button. You will then have 3 minutes with the 30-second reminder. Thank you.
Dear planners and residents, I'm speaking this evening as the owner of Westfield House, which is the only detached house that is positioned to the south of the site in question, and not, as may have been mentioned previously, the new property. Currently, there are not houses to the north or south of me. My house is not set out like many, and it is sited in such a way that my main front elevation, with all the principal outlook aspects, face directly at the proposed development site. Therefore, all my main windows at ground and first floors will look directly at the side of the end property, right on our boundary. And this is something that needs to be considered carefully alongside the general principles of the proposed development. We have been here before, and actually we have been exactly here before. This application, in essence, stands to replicate the former, with the main difference being that details of the proposed houses have been removed. I see this as a potential strategy to avoid the issues that cause problems by removing any descriptions of the problems themselves rather than designing out the problems. The matters relating to the new homes lined up in this fashion are still there, and if approved, it will simply move to the next stage of the application process. If I were the planning department, I'd be insulted, as it shows we are not being listened to. Planning policy is there to protect the current environment and the existing inhabitants of that environment. Planning policy is set to protect or enhance our lives, and it is not there to allow our lives to degrade. There is a fundamental problem with the new application in that it does not tackle the notion of urbanisation. The very fact that the plots are identified as they were before shows that the applicant does not necessarily understand what the planning policy is trying to protect. Rural turns to suburban when we plan housing in this way. During the late 1930s and through to the 1950s, acres of land were developed into suburban developments for people. The difference between this and urban development was the fact there were gaps in between the houses and in some cases grass verges with a tree at the roadside. This was a soft version of urban, and it was supplemented with all the provisions that the residents needed. Over time, suburban turns into urban as the tarmac and paving is introduced and the gaps are eaten up with a demand for additional bedrooms. The trees and grass disappears, and we then have urban sprawl. Do we want to start on this journey here? I say no. The residents have said no, and the planning department has said no. Houses do and can exist in the countryside. They do so not in a regimented way like this, but in a way that is used to react to the expanses of land around them. They had land and very often a house, and various outbuildings would emerge and develop as a reaction to having to attend to the land. This is what makes our countryside look different to a suburban environment. This is why I and many other residents have chosen to live where we live now, and we are entitled to have our environment protected, and we thank the Planning Department for trying to do this for us. There are places for suburban development, but that is not here, nor in the other fields that surround us. There is scope for additional houses, but they should be designed and planned to join our environment, not change our environment. I am tired and fed up with what looks like financial gain being a reason to destroy our rural setting. It's unnecessary and disrespectful. This application makes no sense in the grand scheme of things, and I feel this is simply a method to sell individual plots to interested parties who will then individually look to build the suburban housing. Each one will use the notion of the other to promote their stance, and an outline consent will be used as a baseline reason for looking to do this. Dear planners, please refuse this application, as the proposal failed to address any of the sound and solid reasons that were set out in the formal refusal. Thank you, and please look after our environment and don't allow it to change for the worse. Thank you.
Thank you, Louise. Can I call, please, Keith Tress? I'll be as lenient on the time, Keith, don't worry. Once you're comfortable, again, press the left button and you'll have 3 minutes with the 30-second plus reminder. Thank you.
Good evening. Some of you may recall that I presented an application for 3 self-built houses on this site at your November meeting. This was refused by 7 votes to 6, not particularly due to any opposition to building 3 houses there, but more to the fact that it was a full application. My intention's always been that these properties are for self-builders who could purchase individual plots and build their own homes. The original intention with the full application was to help self-builders create designs that the case officer had previously agreed were suitable for the local area. However, your discussions in November clearly demonstrated that the level of detail I included did not allow self-builders sufficient input into the house design and layout to allow them to develop their own specific preferences. I can now completely understand how this may have appeared to be limiting their options. Your debate clearly indicated there was a general level of support for 3 self-built properties on this site. I've therefore taken your comments on board and resubmitted this as an outline application to give the self-builders the appropriate freedom of choice. I have submitted a unilateral undertaking to confirm my intention that the 3 plots will only be sold to buyers who declare themselves to be self-builders. I appreciate you taking your time to review this proposal again and hope that the revisions you suggested previously now overcome your earlier concerns. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Tress. So we can get the ball rolling. I'll formally propose, in line with Officer's recommendation, reference number 25-504706-outline. Councillor Braun, thank you for seconding that. Councillor Hunt, you're the reason we are here at this extended hour to hear this item. Please.
I love being the reason that everyone's here.
I'm glad you do, Councillor Hunt.
Yeah, I asked for this to come to the committee simply because of the history that has been on this site, where the committee has been involved in pretty much all the other applications that have come forward. Everyone, well, not everyone, some that were on the committee at the time will remember a site visit taking place here for the original application on the land adjoining this. which was, I believe, put to committee as a recommendation refusal and was overturned because there was a consideration at that point that self-build weighed in favour that it should actually be approved. So because of the comments last time, I didn't want this to fall away to an officer as a delegated decision. I thought it right that members, because of the comments last time, do get a chance to see this and make the final decision on it. From looking at the report, and I believe that looking back to the comments that we had at the time where we approved the original self-build, I personally don't see a problem with 3 other properties being on this site, as long as we can secure that they are self-build properties, and that the application that came forward previously with all the detail, there was not that. And I believe that the applicant has listened, come back and has come forward with something now that would be just in outline, and whoever comes and purchases these sites, if approved, can put their own mark on it, and they are self-build properties. So it's down now obviously to members to consider all of the past and the comments from the last meeting, whether we should be approving this or not. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hunt. Councillor Winkless.
Thank you, Chair. Yet again, can the officer put up the picture of the actual piece of ground we're talking about? A photograph of it? Okay, I do remember this coming up before. Okay, I'll listen to the rest of the debate before I actually make my mind up, but thank you very much.
Members, page 88. Recommendation from the officer is to refuse on the following reasons, and it states categorically it's contrary to policies ST1, 3, 5, CP2, CP4, CP6, DM14, DM24 of Bearing Fruits 2031. Okay. Anybody want to talk to that? No. Councillor Hunt.
I think the conclusion the officer has come to is the correct conclusion. Looking at the policies, the officer is right to recommend a refusal on it because that's their judgment, as was the case as the original application that the committee refused to go a different stance. Obviously, it's up to the committee what they do now, but I think we do need self-build housing in this borough. And I think that's what comes on the balance. When looking just at the policies, you do say, yes, it should be refused, but we need to look at that balance more on self-build housing. And that's up to the committee to decide something different. It's our policies that are there. If we want to decide as a committee that we want to take a different stance on it, that's what we can do. Officers can't do that. They have to go by the policies that we've told them to go with. So that's just my comment on policy-wise.
I see no further hands. Those in favour of the officer's recommendation to refuse, please show. Those against the officer's recommendation to refuse, please show. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Any abstentions? 3. Ian, before I take you, James. No, you happy? Councillor Hunt.
Thank you. I propose that this is approved, subject to a condition stating that it is for self-build only. That there is also a condition that materials need to be submitted to be agreed upon in writing with the planning authority, blah, blah, blah. And that the SAMS payment still needs to be made on these dwellings.
Before I get a seconder for that, can we just qualify the difference between self-build and custom build? Because this is for custom build.
Through you, Chairman, the definition in the MPPF, it addresses them both in the same self-build and custom build. It's all one. In this case, if I could respond to Councillor Hunt, we wouldn't put a condition on because it's 3 units. We'd cover it by the Section 106 agreement. They've submitted a unilateral undertaking to that effect, so we wouldn't need a condition because it'd be covered by that. If I could suggest a string of other conditions that you might want to consider.
Please do.
18, bear with me. 1 and 2 relate to the fact that they need to submit reserved matters applications and the matters that are reserved. Condition 3 would be a time limit condition, as is usual. Conditions 4, 5 and 6 would relate to a contaminated land assessment, contaminated land remediation, and what to do in the event of unexpected contamination. They were suggested at the request of the environmental health officers. The adjacent application to the north was subject to a condition related to a construction method statement, so we'd suggest imposing the same again. We'd suggest a reserve matters application is accompanied with details of parking provision, turning areas and cycle storage. That reflects the request of the Highway Authority, and condition 9 would require its provision and then its retention, including the removal of permitted development rights, which is what occurred again on the site to the north. The Highway Authority have also requested provision of visibility displays, so we'd suggest that as condition 10. Condition 11 we'd suggest as preventing the provision of gates within 5.5 metres of the highway, which was a condition on the site to the north and could be replicated here. Condition 12 and 13 would be about biodiversity enhancements and precautionary working methods, which have been suggested by the ecologist at KCC. They've also suggested a lighting condition, which would be condition 14. Condition 15 would address sustainable construction. 16, water consumption. 17, landscaping implementation in accordance with what was ever be approved under the reserved matters application addressing landscaping. And condition 18 deal with the replacement of removed, dying, damaged or diseased landscaping. Most of those, which I haven't specified their source, as replicates what was on the outline permission to the north. Thank you, Chairman. And if I could say that if you was minded to recommend approval, to be clear on the resolution would be subject to the completion of the Section 106 agreement and subject to all of those conditions being drafted by officers to cover those topics, but with us having the delegated authority to draft them.
Councillor Hunt.
Yeah, apologies. I thought I'd said exactly that, but that's...
You didn't say that, no.
That's what I meant. I proposed that.
That as proposed. Any seconders? Thank you, Councillor Speed. That has been proposed and seconded. Those in favour, please show. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. 4. Those against, and 1 abstention. That is therefore approved. Thank you. Members, come on to the Part 5 items. These are decisions by County Council and Secretary of State. Agenda item 5.1. This is Unit 1 Jetty Road, Warden in Kent. Appeal allowed. Anybody wish to speak to that? No, I'll say an appalling decision. 5.2 Webburn Ditch Cottage in Bobbing. Appeal allowed. I'll say again, appalling decision. And 5.3 Land at the Tractor Shed, Provender Lane, Faversham. Notice quashed. Councillor Speed.
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, I'm very, very disappointed in this decision. This is a rural location surrounded by cherry orchards and vineyards, and it's now full of about 15 to 20 containers, which makes it look more like a third world shanty town. These containers were placed without consent, but the landowner continued to add more containers rather than applying for planning, despite the advice of officers. Some of these containers are used by people who store products, others are using them for undertaking small engineering and building works. The inspector's conclusion was that the containers were not being stored at the site, but instead were being kept at the site for storage purposes. Talk about semantics. He identified that activities occurring at part of the site were different to what was stated in the notice, which indicated the site should be described as being in mixed use rather than agricultural use. And he found that altering the notice to address these matters would fundamentally alter the purpose of the notice. So he concluded that enforcement did not specify the alleged breach of planning control with sufficient clarity, and therefore he quashed the notice. It seems to me this is a case of common sense being subjugated by a technicality. Thank you.
I don't disagree, Councillor Speed. Sometimes the decisions aren't particularly palatable, and the way that the inspector actually words or puts his words together aren't particularly sensible, I would suggest. Councillor Braun.
Thank you, Chairman. I mean, I just want to say thank you to the officers. Not a great result on any of these, but yeah, they are ultimately decisions that I feel, yeah, the committee would have also made. So yeah, just thank you to them and keep it up.
Thank you, Councillor Braun. I'm sure that's taken in the spirit that it's proposed, so well done for that. Members, that is it. I therefore close the meeting at 20:41. Thank you for your attendance and any contributions. Have a good, safe journey home and see you at the next meeting. Thank you.